Why this island attracts so much attention and has an almost magical allure to so many people? In other videos, I talked about warmer countries like Greece, Spain, or Cyprus. But still, so many people ask, what about retirement in Ireland? So the time has come for us to have that talk. I have been there, and to be honest, the weather is not like Greece. However, after talking with locals and expats who moved to Ireland, I realized that this island indeed has some nearly mystical qualities and very palpable advantages. So today you know the pros, the cons, and certain truths that only locals know. And by the end of the video, I will explain why Dublin is not the best city in Ireland, but instead there is a more attractive place. That might be just what you're looking for. Ready? Let's start with the pros, and as always, I will not talk about obvious things, like the fact that Ireland has no language barrier, so you don't need to learn a completely new language. Of course, you can try to learn Gaelic, which is the other language in Ireland, and I bet you have a lot of fun doing so. I will also not mention the weather, which is frequently cloudy and windy. Those things a smart audience, like the one watching this channel, already know. But let's talk about some untold advantages of Ireland, things that locals know very well. The first pro I will talk about is great for Americans. Ireland is much closer to the US than other European capitals. Only Reykjavik in Iceland is near to the US west coast. And that makes airline tickets from Dublin to the US also much cheaper. Ireland has the second lowest prices for flying from Europe to the US, again just after Iceland. Ireland's location makes it easier for those who have family or friends in the US because flights from Dublin to America are frequent and relatively short. For example, a flight from Ireland to New York takes around 7 hours. Ireland has also a pre-clearance for US flights, so travelers can go through US immigration before they leave Ireland. This makes travel easier and faster. And since we are talking about flying, there lies another advantage of Ireland. It has excellent infrastructure, especially in terms of airport and airline connectivity. The Dublin airport is one of the 15th largest in Europe. Despite Dublin having just 500,000 residents, its airport is larger than the equivalents of much larger cities like Vienna, Athens, or Warsaw. From there, you can fly to nearly every European country, and also multiple cities in North America, Africa, and Asia. And let's remember that Ireland is the country of Ryanair, so if one day you get bored, you can just hop on a flight to some other country, and that might cost you less than a 3-course meal. Talking about meals, this is our next point. Irish food. And here I'm not talking about dishes, but rather about the ingredients, especially dairy and meat. In Ireland, these things are top-notch, and you only realize how good Irish food ingredients are until you go somewhere else. This, for example, is the standard butter in Ireland, and probably, if you compare this butter to some other ordinary butter in a blind test, you will feel the difference. This is what a local told us, open quote. The quality of Irish ingredients is second to none. The quality of the recipes is still in question, end quote. The next pro of Ireland is a bit more polemic. The high-quality public healthcare. If you ask an Irish about the quality of their public healthcare, chances that he will complain. But when compared to other public systems, it's quite good. The public healthcare system is managed by the Health Service Executive, HSE. It's available to all residents, but it's not always 100% free like in the UK. These extra costs, however, are justified by the better quality and better funding the HSE has when compared to the British NHS. This is what a Brit living in Ireland told us. Open quote. Having moved from the UK to Ireland 3 years ago, the system here is incredible compared to the NHS. From GP visits, hospitals, emergency and maternity, it's light years ahead of the UK. We had our first kid in the UK and recently a second here, and the experience is incomparable. End quote. If you're a foreigner living in Ireland, you must show the HSE that you intend to live in the country for at least a year. Documents like a long-term rental contract might help. Ireland has about 40 doctors for every 10,000 people, which is more than countries like Australia or the Netherlands. The pro number 5 of Ireland is the safety. In 2022, Ireland has only 44 homicides. And remember, we are talking about a country with 5.4 million people. For comparison, Chicago, a city with half the population of Ireland, had 711 cases. So despite half the size, Chicago had 16 times more homicides than Ireland. That is how safe Ireland is. If we talk about other crimes like burglaries or thefts, they're also lower. But these crime occurrences are much more prevalent in Dublin than in the rest of the country. But don't worry, in a few minutes I will show you a city that has much less crime for a much lower price, so keep watching. And the next pro is that Ireland has tax agreements with over 70 countries. This includes the US and the UK, which helps prevent double taxation. In addition, Ireland's tax rates are relatively low compared to other countries in Europe, especially when you compare against Germany, France, or Sweden. Now, after these 6 advantages I have shown so far, you might be asking, what are the bad things, the cons of this island? So take a seat, because the list of cons of moving to retire in Ireland is also quite interesting. The first one is the high cost of living in the capital. See, Dublin got extremely attractive for European companies in the last few years. So many corporations opened new branches or even moved their headquarters to the Irish capital. These corporations often pay quite high salaries, and frequently they bring their employees from abroad. That, among other reasons, drastically inflated the prices in the capital. To put it into perspective, let's compare Dublin with some other European capitals. The cost of living in the Irish capital is 27% more expensive than Berlin. It's 42% more expensive than Rome, and it's 55% more expensive than Madrid. Things like a basic dinner in a local, not fancy restaurant in Dublin will cost you more than 30 euros. While in places like Madrid or Berlin, you can still sit and eat for less than 15 euros. But don't leave this video yet, because soon I will show you a really nice and cheaper place to live in Ireland, and it's not Dublin. The second negative aspect for those planning to retire in Ireland is the limited retirement visa options. Because in fact, Ireland's retirement visa is not really a long-term retirement visa. The main option for retirees is the Stamp Zero visa. However, this visa comes with strict requirements. To qualify, retirees must show proof of a steady income of around 50,000 euros per year per person. Candidates also need to prove they have considerable savings to cover potential expenses. The problem is that the Stamp Zero visa is only valid for 1 year, and it must be renewed each year, which can be quite inconvenient for expats who want to stay indefinitely. The third issue with Ireland is the lack of good public transportation in rural areas. Ireland had a huge railway network in the past, but now it's much smaller, and what remains is mainly across major cities like Dublin, Galway, Cork, and Limerick. Rural areas also have limited or no public transport options. Public bus services are available in some areas, but schedules are limited with fewer buses on weekends. You can always buy a car, but car ownership can be costly, and fuel prices in Ireland are not among the cheapest. And since we are talking about things that are not cheap, time for us to talk about the biggest problem of all. The issue that if you ask 10 expats in Ireland what is the biggest problem today in the country, at least half will mention that problem: the super high housing costs. Housing costs in Ireland are high, especially in Dublin, but also in other cities like Cork and Galway. The demand for housing has consistently outpaced supply in recent years, pushing property prices up and up and up. A 3-bedroom apartment in Dublin might cost you close to 3,000 euros per month, 86% more than what would you pay for a similar property in Madrid, Spain. The situation with housing in Dublin is so absurd that some Ryanair pilots are living in social housing. And they are pilots, one of the most well-paid careers in most countries. I asked a local from Dublin about how bad the problem with housing in Dublin is, and this is what he told me, open quote: "The new fear isn't the cost of rent. That has just to do with the level of supply versus demand. The real problem is not finding a place to live at all." End quote. That might sound frightening, but remember that I mentioned before about a place in Ireland that is safer than Dublin, much cheaper than Dublin, and it still has all the infrastructure you need? Get ready for it, because not all Irish cities are created equal when it comes to costs and quality of life. But first, I would like to ask a small favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. So this is Limerick. Located in the west of Ireland, Limerick is the third largest city in the country, with a population of about 102,000 people. This city is way cheaper than Dublin, and also offers a very good quality of life. Limerick has a well-developed transportation system. Bus 8M operates regular bus services through the city and to nearby towns with frequent routes. The cost of a monthly bus pass in Limerick is around €60. In Dublin, it's almost the double. Limerick is also close to Shannon Airport, just 25 minutes away by car, and this airport offers flights to major destinations, including the US and the UK. The city is located just 2 hours from Dublin, by train or car, and the road from Dublin to Limerick is the M7 motorway, one of the best in the country. The city also has a respectable healthcare infrastructure for its size. The University Hospital Limerick is the main healthcare provider and the largest hospital in the Midwest region, serving over 400,000 people in the surrounding counties. While not being a big city, Limerick also has all the urban amenities one could expect, like multiple supermarkets from Tesco to Aldi, or the local department shop Dunes store. If you enjoy spending time outside, and I hope you do, Limerick offers many green spaces and walking trails. The People's Park in the city center is a large public park with gardens, a playground, and walking paths. The Shannon River Walk provides scenic views and is a favorite spot for local runners. A tip from a resident is to try the new Coosac Olympic Trail. And remember when I say that lately, certain crime is increasing in Dublin? Well, here is another strong point of Limerick. It's safer. According to the Travel Safe Abroad database, Limerick is the safest among the major Irish cities. And that is curious because Limerick got a bad rap during the early 2000s because it was a crime hotspot, but those days are long gone. This is what a local told us about the city. Open quote. Like any city of significant size, Limerick has some bad areas. But I will argue that some parts of Dublin are more dangerous than Limerick will ever be. It's big enough that there is always something interesting going on, but not too big it feels overcrowded and impersonal. I found people genuinely nice, welcoming, and down to earth. It's a more authentic piece of Ireland than Dublin or Galway. End quote. The biggest advantage of all, however, is the cost of living. Limerick is much cheaper than Dublin in all aspects. Eating out is cheaper, a beer at the nearby pub is cheaper, but most of all, housing is much cheaper. Just pause here for a second and take a look at those numbers. They are the average house prices in 2024. Let's compare what you can rent for €2,000 or less in each city. In the central part of Dublin, with this budget of €2,000 per month, you will not find much, but you can rent a one-bedroom apartment with a tiny kitchen. Now let's check Limerick and see what you can get for the same €2,000. There, with the same budget, you can rent an elegant two-bedroom apartment with a nice and cozy fireplace and a spacious kitchen. So what would you choose? I mean, I know that Ireland is not the cheapest place in Europe, but let's admit, it has its charms, despite the weather. But if good weather is that important to you, I made a comparison that nobody made before between Italy and Greece, two places with the most pleasant weather in the world. Check this video here on your left and discover which one of the two is the ultimate retirement destination in Europe.